We just finished dinner a little bit ago. I just read my chapter of Les Miserables today, and I think, well, pause. I'm getting ahead of myself. Over the weekend, I've read 5 chapters, and oh my god, what is this? Part 3, book 1. And I'm actually going to read you chapter 1 because it's like half a page or less than half a page long, and it kind of sets the tone for what this book is. And it's pretty much talking about how Paris kind of births these street urchin types and stuff like that. Like, it's talking about how children on the street kind of navigate their lives kind of deal. And the chapter names are kind of interesting. It's like his uses, his other things I can't remember, his limits, his characteristics, things like that. And I'm going to put this on the stand so I can actually read to you. It is only 8 p.m. and I am so freaking tired right now. Like, I'm just a mess. So, let's read this chapter. Alright, this is the one that I said before was called Parvulus. I still don't really know what that is. Anyway, Paris had her special child, and the woods have their special bird. The bird is the sparrow, and the child is the street urchin. Paris and childhood, the heat of the furnace in the light of the dawn. Strike the two together, and the spark you will draw from them is a small, live person, homuncio, as Plautus would say. A small, happy person. He does not eat every day, but he goes to the play every evening if he chooses. He has no shirt to his back, no shoes on his feet, no roof over his head. Like the flies, he does without these things. He is aged between 7 and 13. Lives in a gain, haunts the streets, sleeps in the open, wears a pair of his father's old trousers which come down to his heels, an old hat belonging to some other father which comes down below his ears, a single brace with a yellow border. He bustles about, keeping his eyes open, rummages everywhere, squanders time, hangs around the cafes, knows thieves, and is familiar with trollops, talks argot, sings obscene ditties, and has no evil in him. In his heart there is a pearl of innocence, and pearls do not dissolve in mud. While man is still a child, God keeps him innocent. If you ask the great city, who is this person? She will answer, he's my child. So that is the tone that these chapters have. And I am going to assume that this might be the beginning of the descriptions for Gavroche, the child that's kind of like a messenger or go-between in the musical and movies and stuff. So we will see. The chapter I'm on is called His Limits, and literally it's just kind of been describing him and how he, like, in the evening will use some of the money he's gathered to go to like the theater every night, and how it like transforms him even though he doesn't have much, kind of thing. But this seems like, okay, yeah, it keeps going and going. This is going to be a long book, so we'll see how long the descriptions go on and on here. But that's where I'm at right now. I'm kind of like crouching down, so I'm gonna grab this. Last night was Sunday, yeah, and we had cats. We had Werq the World at the Zenith, which is a venue that I've been to once before, don't like, and it's also on the other side of the city, so it took us like an hour by metro to get there. Werq the World is fun. Honestly, the best part is the vibe of the crowd. Like, people were going bonkers, and there was this little woman sitting on my right who, she was just living for everything that was happening. So honestly, that was the best part. It was fun though. I got this Evie Oddly shirt there, and also there was a queen there that I was not expecting at all. She wasn't on any of the lists for who could potentially be there. Laganja Estranja was one of the people that we saw. I was really surprised. These cats are just so relaxed right now. Oh, look at that girl. Yes. And then there's Ori. Oh my gosh, he is just so fluffy. Look at that fur. He doesn't care, and she's being cute. Look at you. Got your belly. Got your belly. Get the footy. Yes, get the footy. Chin scratch. Oh, she loves the chin scratch. Oh, sneeze. this noise is probably going to be very prevalent. So that's the AC. We are on day 1 of a heat wave, or heat dome as they're calling it. I'm not sure the difference. It's supposed to last about like 3 days and then it's gonna storm and everything. But we have a pretty noisy portable air conditioner that we need to have because we have the chinchillas. So I don't know how loud it comes off on camera, but I mean, it is what it is there. So I'm gonna go over here, actually, where I have the book. I read 2 chapters today, and it's getting a bit dark, actually. So it mentions, actually no, I don't think I need to look in the book, but it mentions that the children on the streets of Paris were like disappearing, essentially, and apparently King Louis the 15th, I think it was, there was this rumor going around that he was kidnapping the children for something called a purple bath, and I kind of assumed what that meant, but I wasn't 100%. So I looked it up, and it turns out it is exactly what you think it is. It's like blood sacrifice, like blood bath type things, and that isn't what was happening. What was actually happening is that the police were being paid by how many vagrants they could take off the streets. Like, they're paid like a certain amount per person, and children were easier to arrest than adults. So they were pretty much rounding up all these kids and were getting paid for it, kind of thing. Also, the kings before King Louis XV were rounding up the children and taking them, if they were like around 15 or older, to be in the military, like to man the boats and things like that. So pretty much being a street kid in Paris during that time was pretty dangerous, because you could literally just be abducted by the government to be used as cannon fodder. So yeah, a lot going on there. But also, I guess what was happening is some children were being abducted that like had families and stuff like that. So those parents would then go to the government, and the government would freaking arrest the parents. Like, they would be reprimanded, kind of thing. So it was not a good time just to be a child in general, apparently. But that's pretty much the main part of what was being talked about today, is how we're to the point where children are just kind of disappearing, and there's rumors going around, and kind of the history behind that a bit. But tonight we're actually going to go to our friend's house to play some D&D, Curse the Strahd campaign, and right now we're debating on if we're gonna go over there and have like dinner beforehand, because we're not playing until like 7:30, so definitely a later session. But we haven't been able to play in quite a while because either we've been out of town or others have been out of town, so it'll be nice to actually try and get into the rhythm of playing again. Don't mind me, I haven't even brushed my hair today or changed into my pajamas or anything. But I have read 3 chapters of Les Miserables, and this was actually interesting, not what I read, but the history that I found out. Because one of the chapters, for some reason, is talking about the guillotine a bit, and it's just kind of like, okay, whatever. But there was a sentence where it says, "No fairground equals Le Grève, the place of execution." And I'm just like, what the fuck? Because in today's French, Le Grève, like, that's what protests are called. Like, if your work is going on strike or whatever, it's Le Grève, like Le Grève, Le Grève, Le Grève. That is, when it is the season, that is all you will hear. And so I asked Toma, I'm like, hey, like, does this have like a double meaning or something that I just don't know about? And he had no idea. And I looked it up, and it turns out, of course, we have another bit of dark history for France here, that there was a place called, I think it was, is it Place de la Grève, I assume is what it would be, but I'm gonna double check. It was just Place de Grève, and this square is where they would do the public executions starting in the 13th century all the way into the 1800s, so really long time. And where this was done is where today the Hotel de Ville is, and that's where like the mayor of Paris is and everything. We've actually been in there before. But I've actually recorded videos of this square multiple times, and the end of last week's reading vlog actually has it as well. Well, a little clip of it. And Like, it definitely isn't used for the same thing today, like, completely different, and it's just, I find it so interesting that that's where all this happened. Like, they even did witch burnings there, but this is where the word we use today, le Grève, comes from, and I'm gonna read a little paragraph from this article I found. It says, the square was also a tremendously popular site for public gatherings unrelated to executions, including protests and worker strike. Shows of dissent that became increasingly common following the First Revolution of 1789. This makes sense. Grève commonly means strike in French. So I just learned the history of the word le Grève, and so did my husband. So we both learned something new today. It's always interesting going into the history of something here because it's always going to end up being something dark and disturbing. But I also feel like when reading Les Miserables, you either have to know a bit about French and the language to be able to kind of recognize certain things, or be willing to look stuff up. Because, like, if I didn't know what today's use of that word was, I would have just completely just gone over it, not thought of it at all, and wouldn't have realized this history behind it. So, I don't know, I think that's kind of one of the reasons that makes reading Les Miserables so interesting, is just all of that history behind everything that happens and what is said in here. So, besides that, not much is going on. I think I said I read 3 chapters. They were all really short, so there's pretty much nothing else to report. It's still just talking about street urchins and how, like, if they saw police, they had a certain cry that they would shout out to warn others. How, I guess, the king used to be called a pear. I don't know if it's because how he was shaped or whatever, and so they would, like, draw pears on walls and stuff. So just little things like that, and then some random information about the guillotine thrown in. But yeah, that's about it for today. We are in day 2 of a heat wave, heat dome, whatever you want to call it. So not going outside today, and have the AC on, of course. Yeah, no plans. Tomorrow morning I have my orthodontist appointment, which that's just always not fun. But that's about it. Bonjour, bonjour. I have read 3 chapters today. My husband has been having meetings all morning, so I had to wait for him to be done with that so I could film. But I'm also filming in my kitchen again so that I'm away from the AC noise, because it was super humid this morning, and that was not fun. This morning was actually pretty busy. We are trying to get up at like 8 a.m. every day to go for a walk before he has to work. And we did that. We did the groceries. So I actually had planned our meals for the next 3 nights, which that's a big deal here. It's literally like my least favorite thing to do is planning dinner. I absolutely detest it. But did that, had my ortho appointment this morning, so she took off the bands and replaced one of the bracket, but didn't put any of the bands on, so I don't know what that means. But anyway, I read 3 chapters. I don't really understand the chapters. Like, especially the first one I read, I'm like, I have no idea what's going on here. It was pretty much just name dropping a bunch of people from like ancient Rome and Greece and some other names I really just didn't recognize at all. But the last 2 tiny chapters I thought were really interesting and were like the only things that made sense. So I'm gonna read them. They're really short, so it's just gonna take a second. But this is on page 506. It says, Paris is the world in miniature. Athens, Rome, Sybaris, Jerusalem, Penten, all the civilizations and all the barbarisms as well. She would be grieved if she had no guillotine. A little of the Place de Grève is a good thing. What would the endless festivity amount to without that seasoning? Our laws have wisely provided it, and thanks to them, the blade drips over the carnival. It's just like very, very ominous, but with it saying like Paris is the world in miniature, it's like kind of talking about how you kind of have it all here essentially, and also how there's people from everywhere, and it just has a lot of comparisons to ancient Rome and ancient Greece. And the next 2 chapters I read, it's kind of more of that, where I don't really exactly understand what it's talking about, but it pretty much turns Paris, it's talking about Paris as if it were an actual person or like a god, And then it says how like the street urchins, they just need light. And all I can think of is freaking Uther from WoW being like, put your faith in the light. Like, it just seems so bizarre to me. But the very next chapter I will be reading tomorrow is called The Boy Gavroche. So we are hopefully finally to something that is interesting and makes more sense. And, oh, that's a pretty short chapter. Is that the end of the book? Okay, that is actually the end of book 1, is that chapter. And so I'm kind of scared that we're going to jump to something else after that. But we'll see, I guess. So it seems my little theory about this kind of talking about Gavroche and talking about like street children and stuff like that is correct. But, oh man. Book 2 is called A Grand Bourgeois. So I don't really know what that is going to be. And I'm kind of nervous. But anyway, that's where I'm at right now. What is today? Today's Thursday. Gosh, I have had my days of the week so messed up. I have been a day ahead, and then today comes and I feel like it's Wednesday instead. Like, I don't know. We're trying to figure out D&D at the moment. First it's supposed to be this weekend. Now it might be during the week. So I don't really know if that's going to be happening. So I'm not quite sure what my weekend plans are going to be because of that so far. But that's where I'm at right now. Thunderstorms. So much rain. I'm getting some thunder and lightning too, which is my favorite. Very dark gray day. And now it's freaking hailing. What the hell? Oh, my poor plants. Oh god. See hail popping out of there. Woo! You can hear the thunder still. It is so humid in here now from the rain, and it's stopped for now. Saw earlier, quite a lot going on. I have my kitchen apron on because I'm about to get some things chopped up for dinner tonight and whatnot, because it has to chill in the fridge for a while. But I just wanted to pop in here real quick and say that I read the last chapter of book 1 here, the one about Gavroche, and oh gosh, Appa biting the cage. And pretty much, he actually has a family, which I wasn't expecting. I figured he was just an orphan, but he might as well be, because he pretty much still lives on the streets. His dad doesn't care about him, and his mom hates him, is what it says. And okay, part of this chapter kind of blew my mind, because it turns out his family lives in the house that Jean Valjean first rented when he arrived in Paris with Cosette's, what is it called? The Gorbeau tenement, which today is now a Monoprix. But they live there. It's his parents and his 2 sisters, apparently. And it's kind of like the same situation as with the Thénardiers, where they like and dote on the girls and just kind of ignore the boy. So he pretty much only goes home like 2 to 3 times a month to just kind of see his mother a bit, but she's just like, why are you here? And so besides that, he lives on the streets, and that's kind of his choice. But it says that he's about 11 or 12, and it says 8 or 9 years have passed since we had talked about Jean Valjean. So Cosette will basically be about an adult at this point. And then the very last 2 sentences of this chapter, I'm going to read them real quick. It says, well, by cell it means room, but since it's a crappy house, it's calling it that. It says, the cell next to theirs was occupied by a penniless young man called Monsieur Marius. It is with this Monsieur Marius that we are now concerned. And that is how book 1 ends. So as I had been reading that, I was assuming that Marius was probably going to be the next character that was introduced. So I'm going to assume that is the direction it is going, obviously, now. But yeah, that kind of shocked me at the end, where it's just like everyone is a lot more connected than I thought they were, or I guess realized they were, because like that connection obviously isn't something that's in the other media. So that's really cool, and I like that that's how it's set up, where it's a connection that doesn't necessarily mean like that's how they meet or anything, but it's just a fun little thing. And now I'm gonna go chop fruits and vegetables. So it's currently about 8:45, and I had a horrible night last night. Pikachu actually woke me up at 3 a.m., had a really hard time falling back asleep, and then I've been up since 6 a.m. and it's a freaking Saturday. But at least we have plans this morning. We're getting ready right now to head out to the Petit Palais, which is a museum here, to see the Giovanni Boldini, I believe his name is, exhibit. He's actually a Sicilian artist who spent a lot of time in Paris when he was alive, and I first saw his art at the first museum we went to when we were in Palermo in Sicily, and it turned out that there is now an exhibit of all of his artwork here in Paris, and that opened on my birthday actually. So it was pretty cool kind of coincidence because his art hasn't had an exhibition in Paris in 60 years. So that was pretty cool timing, and he was like my favorite artist that we saw out of all the museums in Sicily. So we were gonna go to that exhibit this morning. Then we're gonna head to the movie theater and watch The Northman. So we have a bit of a busy morning and early afternoon. I'm not sure if the movie is gonna exactly be my thing, but it has really good ratings on Letterboxd, so I definitely want to check it out. But since it's so early, I have not read my chapter of Les Miserables yet, so I will be back later to fill you in on that. We are back home now, and I just read 3 chapters of Les Miserables. I really have no idea what we're talking about in here right now. It's pretty much just describing this really old grumpy guy that like hates everything, is really old-fashioned, and it's saying how like when everyone was young he was already an old man, so I don't really know what they mean by everyone, like. And it's pretty much just describing him and how basically horrible he is. He has a daughter that's in her 50s that's unmarried, that he like still beats and everything. But then the end of the second chapter, it says, he said roundly, the French Revolution was a load of scoundrels. So I don't know who this guy is supposed to be, but apparently his like baptismal name is Luc Esprit. I don't know if I'm saying that second one right, but his last name is Gillenormand or something like that. And I don't recognize the name, so I don't know if that's supposed to mean something to me. But that's all those chapters are about, so I don't really understand where we're headed. And it gave the address of where he's living, so I was like, oh cool, I'll put that in Google Maps. But then right after it said that, the sentence immediately after is like, but his house has been torn down since then. So it's just like, all right, I guess not. But this morning we had gone to the Giovanni Boldini exhibit, like I'd been talking about earlier. You would have seen all that footage by now. And I really loved it. I really wish they had a few more paintings. It felt a little small. And one of the things I learned is that this guy had been obsessed with how horses move. So there were a few horse paintings, which are some of the better ones I have seen in my life. And I just thought that was really fascinating. And he tried to like capture their movement in his paintings. And some of the things he would paint, he would catch flack for because he would do it from a different point of view than what you would expect. And so a lot of people would try to get him to change his style and what he painted and stuff. And he's just like, nah, I'm good with just painting what I see. And I kind of really appreciate that. And I just love his style so much. So like Alphonse Mucha, if I can talk correctly, and now Giovanni Boldini, like, they're definitely some of my favorite artists. I mean, besides like Monet and all of that, but like, so yeah, that was fun. And after we had lunch and then went to the movie The Northman, which I actually enjoyed that better than I expected. Out of the three Robert Eggers movies we've seen, The Witch, The Lighthouse, and now The Northman, which I guess he likes to put the in front of everything, this one was definitely my favorite. There were some really cool scenes with the cameras that really like caught my eye and was like, oh, okay, this is pretty neat. The story is pretty meh though, and it is definitely like Bizarro World. Like it's a pretty crazy movie, but I am okay with it in the end. I liked it, I guess I could say. But today is Saturday. Yeah, today's Saturday. Not doing D&D today. Don't have anything planned for tomorrow, so I will end the reading vlog here. So we will start next week, I guess, learning more about this random old man. So thank you for hanging out with me. It is always appreciated. And until next time, bonne journée and au revoir.